Hey guys, it's Nicole Eaton from NicoleEaton.com, author of Rock Your Soul, the Down to Earth Guide to Mastering Your Mind, and soul therapist here to help you live your best life. And today I want to talk about how you define success and setting some realistic goals, setting some goals that are going to help you reach joy and not just feel like you're chasing. I don't know if anybody else has had this sensation of feeling like they're chasing goals. And sometimes either we're not reaching them, we're not following through, or we're just having a hard time feeling the feeling we thought we'd feel once we got there. I remember after I got my master's degree and I got settled into my big girl job. I was working as a therapist at a not-for-profit, and I remember having this moment of like, "Oh my God, is this it?" And I was sitting in my office, and it wasn't anything wrong. I really loved the people I worked with. I loved the what I was doing for the most part, but there was just something inside me that I was just not feeling as fulfilled as I thought I would feel when I got there. And so luckily I was able to really restructure how I do things, the way I do things that brought me to a different place. But it really started with redefining what success means for me. There's this book called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. And I guess that's a really strong title to start off with, but it's by Mark Manson. And one of the most important things it talked about that I took away from this book was the importance of defining your values and defining how you measure them. And it's not something that I had put a lot of thought into previously. And I think it's really fascinating how little we actually know about ourselves and how we're functioning. And when we take a step back and start asking ourselves these questions of, who am I? What is it that I really want? How do I measure how I feel cared about? How do I measure success? How do I know when I've reached my peak? How do I know or how do I connect with how people feel about me? How do I define that? And I think it's so fascinating. So in this book, he talks all about measuring goals. And one of the things that stood out to me is he was talking about, I measure the value of a relationship in whether it's good or not through frequency of contact. And he was talking about his brother, and he was saying, my brother does not. My brother could go 6 months without speaking to me, and I became, he was saying he became resentful of this. He was becoming resentful that his brother could go so long without talking to him, and he was always the one having to make the initiation. When he stopped to really assess it and talk things out with his brother, he realized that his brother thought they had a great relationship because he didn't measure their connection and the depth of their connection in the same way. And so you can have these beautiful perceptions in a way of measuring quality of happiness or joy or success or relationships or connection that might be totally different than every person around you. So, you knowing yourself and taking time to know who you are and what drives you and what's important to you and how you're measuring things is so vital for how you communicate it to everybody else. It's amazing to me that when I do therapy with people that they could be 60 years old in my office and never have taken a moment to set aside to ask themselves, what's important to me? What is it that I really want? And it's wild because we get really caught up in these external validations and external pressures of what everybody else wants us to do. So maybe it's that your family wanted you to go to med school and work a 9 to 5, and they wanted you to complete college, and maybe you felt more creative. And so we've been trained from a really young age to not listen to ourselves. We have been trained to fall in line and to conform with what is expected of us or what is deemed successful. And the most amazing thing to me is that the world celebrates external and visible successes. They never celebrate those internal ones, the ones that make our quality of life better. Nobody's ever going to come up and say, hey, you look really peaceful today. You look content as all hell. I've never had anybody said that. I have had people say, wow, you look like you've lost some weight. Or wow, you look like you're doing really well in your business based on what I can see on Facebook. Our measurements of how things are going are often defined for us by whether other people are seeing them or not. And this is a really dangerous game we can play, is doing things only for people to see. Because the more we do that, the more there's this discrepancy between what people are seeing and who we actually are or where we're actually at. And for a really long time, working in a self-help field, I felt like I had to be happy all the time. And that's not a realistic thing. It's just not. There are going to be days that are hard. There are going to be situations in your life that arise that are challenging. And it's really, really important for people to know that that's normal. But for a long time, I felt like I had to project this persona of being the happiest person you can meet so that other people knew it was possible, right? But I began to feel like a fraud or feel like there was this differential between me and what I was projecting. And I remember like just not even wanting to participate in any of it anymore and just wanting to back out of it because it was just so far from where I was. And I realized that the more vulnerable I could be about, man, it was a rough day and here's how I got through it. And being more honest about who I was and where I was at was so much more of a connector for people than just pretending I was a certain way all the time. So our goals really have to come from within. And although we get trophies and in awards for certain things externally, our true happiness is going to always come from inside of ourselves. We can use external pieces or situations or people as conduits of our happiness, but they cannot be the sole location of our happiness. They cannot be the sole location of what our success is. We can't get this massive, major promotion, and then the minute we get fired from it, that we feel like we're nothing again. Your goal is not to achieve all of these external pieces, which is what we're taught, which is what we're rewarded for, which is what is programmed into us. Your goal has to be a little bit, in my opinion, in my suggestion, deeper than that. So, part of when you're setting goals, I want you to be thinking about, what do I need most? I think it's so brilliant that Elizabeth Gilbert wrote Eat, Pray, Love, one of the most it was on the New York Times bestseller list for like an insanely long time. And she was talking about how she didn't write it for anybody to really read. She wrote it for herself. She wrote it to process through some really tough things. She wrote it because she needed to write that book. And it ended up benefiting a lot of people along the way because she wrote it, because she needed it. But if she would have done that in a way to make it look perfect or in a way that was for other people, it would have changed the course of the book. It would have not been as deep, or it may have come up as inauthentic. Assessing what you need the most right now. Maybe you need more peace. So how are you going to create more peace? Maybe the goal is for that. Maybe the goal is that you want to put content out in the world to share with people because it's important to you, because sharing what's on your heart is important to you. So asking yourself, what is it that I need, is going to be one of the first steps in setting your own goals and setting your truly aligned goals. The second question you really need to ask yourself is, what is my motive? What am I trying to get out of doing this? Or setting this goal? Do I want the recognition for other people, or do I want it for me? Am I losing weight because I want people to compliment me on Facebook, or am I losing weight because it feels so good to feel healthy? Check in with yourself. Is there somebody you're trying to please, or somebody who will give you an award at the end of this? Because the thing is if you get there and nobody's handing out trophies and you were expecting a trophy, it's going to feel like you did a whole lot for nothing. That motive has to come from within you. It has to come from a place within you where you're asking yourself, I'm doing this because I want to be healthier. I'm doing this because I want to feel stronger. I'm doing this because I want to be smarter. I'm doing this because I have something on my heart I really want to share. The motive is the most important piece. You cannot chase status. You cannot chase money, because anything external can be swiped out from underneath you within 5 seconds. And if you're doing it for those things, you're putting yourself in a position to lose all of it. So those things can be perks. They can be reward, they can be those bonus features of the movie, but they can't be the entire movie. The next question I want you to ask yourself is, What feeling am I really desiring to feel? What is it that you're actually wanting? Because a lot of people set goals because they think they will feel a certain way when they get there. Daniel Lepore has this entire uh, movement, I guess we'll call it. Um, Daniel Lepore has this entire movement called the desire map, and the whole desire mapping process. It's really fascinating, and you can look it up, kind of the process of it. But it's really about setting goals based on how you feel and how you'd like to feel, rather than setting goals that you think will feel a certain way once you get there. So in this, it talks about taking that feeling and working on finding little ways to feel that way every day. So if you want to feel successful and you're thinking, oh, I need to go to school to feel successful, I need to get a degree, or I need to write a book, or I need to whatever that scenario is, I need to be a board member, I need to whatever to feel successful. It's about putting little things in your day that will help you feel successful. So maybe that's starting a workout program and committing to keeping that and completing that and that feeling of success. Or maybe that's taking 10 minutes to study or read on something important to you or that you get value from every day. Or maybe that's setting another smaller goal for a piece of art or something you're working on each day. Or thinking about how you can incorporate that feeling is going to be a total game changer, because the thing is that most of life we're not achieving. Most of life we're just in the process of achieving. Most of life we're just hanging out in that middle space. And if you make that middle space more enjoyable, the overall feeling of your life will be better. You'll be able to look back and not just say, oh, okay, in January of 2020, I did that one big thing, and then the rest of the next 2 years, nothing happened that was significant. You can look back and say, no, I felt successful most days because I made small challenges for myself that allowed me to feel successful every single day that I was doing something. And then I had this big moment and it was great, but every other day was great too. That's the piece that's really important, is how do we make the process better? How do we enjoy the journey? How do we create little moments of happiness throughout our day? How do we create moments of success? Whatever those goals are, what is it that you're actually desiring to feel? Because that's really driving where you want to go. That's driving the momentum. And the next question is, how am I going to celebrate myself when I achieve this? Again, we're talking about the power of external validation and recreating your own standards for how you celebrate. Now, when you start to shift your focus and goal set, not from what you think you'll get when you get there or what your parents want from you or what society wants from you, when you start to ask yourself those questions and redefine what you want for you, when you start to create goals not based on what you're going to get when you get there, but how it feels along the way and how it feels to do better and how it feels to write and how it feels to produce something that you're super excited about, and not just the trophy or award that you're going to get at the end. It hits totally different. It's a different feeling. So when you're resetting these goals, part of how you can celebrate yourself is with the feeling of completion, with the feeling of fulfillment, with the feeling of peace and contentment and achievement within you. It's just an entirely different feeling. It's an entirely different moment. But if you're not feeling that necessarily, consider creating celebrations for yourself. Maybe you work for yourself and you don't get, a promotion or raise when you do a good job in the same way that a person working in a different field would do. Maybe you have to celebrate yourself. Maybe you take that vacation you've been wanting to go on. Maybe you have a spa day for yourself. Or you don't have to spend a ton of money. Maybe you just have some close friends over for a nice night in and just talk about your accomplishments together. It can be small, it can be a dance party, it can be simple, but allow it to bring you joy. Allow it to honor all the hard work that you've been doing. But this way of goal setting, guys, is going to be totally different. I was at a sermon last weekend, and the pastor was talking a lot about external validation and what's valuable and how do you get, joy. And joy is different than happiness because joy is sustainable. Happiness is really a burst of energy that's associated with an external person or place or situation, and it doesn't stay because it's external. Joy is coming from within, and when you start setting goals based on how you want to feel, it's always a change. And one of the things that Pastor Stephen said that was just stuck with me was he said, when you're starving for external supplements, you will stuff yourself with things that will never touch that space. So, as you're creating your goals, I really want you to be thinking about what is it that your soul needs from you? What is it that you've been avoiding? What is it that you really need to face head on? One of the big things, and I think the big progresses that you can make is really handling things in a different fashion, facing it straight on, straightforward. I actually wrote a little Instagram, Facebook post about my daughter. I took my kids. It's restaurant week in Charlotte, so all of the high-end restaurants are having it's like a fixed menu, and you go and you get to try out different restaurants at a more reasonable price. So we were going to this high-end restaurant. It was me, my two kids, and one of my good friends here. And my daughters are 8 and 11. And I told them on the way, I gave them, of course, a lecture. And I said to them, listen, like, I know you guys are mature enough and responsible enough to handle going to this kind of setting. This is not a normal restaurant. This is a big deal for you, because we're going to use our best manners and our, and handle it well. Well, of course, my kids are really good kids. They really are. But when we got there, my 8-year-old spilled her water all over. Like, the ice cubes were all over. It was all over her. It was all over the table. It was all over the bread. It was just all over. And of course, I'm like, of course, why wouldn't you spill that right here, right now? But she handled it so well. She grabbed a towel and wiped her pants off and put the ice cubes back in the cup that were on the table still. And she looked at me so sad and she goes, "Mommy, I don't think I'm responsible enough to be here." And my heart just broke. And I said to her, "Look, like, it's not about never making a mistake. It's about how you recover from the mistake. It's how you handle it when it doesn't work, or how you handle it when it happens." And she handled it with such grace for an 8-year-old. She didn't cry or scream or yell. She just picked it up and put it back. And so as you're facing your goals, I want you to think of, how are you going to handle this? How are you going to face life head on? How are you going to address the things in your life that maybe you've been needing to address? Because I think goal setting goes a lot with looking at what really needs to shift in your life. And especially when we're doing some honest goal setting, when we're doing some alignment setting, which is what I'd really like to call it, that we have to really face our shit. And so again, it's not that you're not going to mess up sometimes. It's not that you're going to have a day where you don't feel successful, or you don't complete what you set out to complete, or you don't follow through. Those are going to be days. It's how you recover from it. It's how you choose to get back up and try again. It's how you choose to continue forward on the path because you want it, because it's important to you, because it brings you joy doing it, because it makes you feel good on the inside, because it's in alignment with who you are and what you want to leave in the world. So when you're asking yourself these questions and setting goals in alignment with yourself, you also have to look at, who do I want to be? Who am I not being because I'm not facing something head on? How are these external pressures keeping me held down or locked into place? So getting, again, this is kind of a theme right now, but getting honest with yourself, because you cannot live in your truth. You cannot live in joy until you're honest with yourself, until you're looking at your life and saying, wow, I really need to change that. Maybe you don't know how, but again, if you start to even just ask yourself these questions of, what do I need? And then taking that day-to-day approach for bringing more of those desired feelings in and creating goals that are in alignment, that are from a motive that is about you, that is about your happiness. And again, your motive doesn't have to be entirely about you. It can be about what you want to leave or what you feel like you have to offer the world. That's great too. I think that sometimes with focus, I think it's so important to think about yourselves that I don't want to exclude thinking about others. I just want to encourage you not to live your life for others. if your goal is to put something out to the world that changes lives, please do that. Please feel called to do that. So I am so excited for you to check in with yourself and start really setting those soul-aligned goals, asking yourself what you need, what your motive is, what you're really wanting to feel, and then how you're going to celebrate yourself and planning that out. How are you measuring your success? How are you going after that? I put out a couple mini courses on my website, www.nicholeeaton.com. They're available right now for $15 a piece or $40 for the bundle. And I think they're going to be a game changer for you this year as you set your new soul aligned goals. They are on consistency, routine, intuitive decision making, and manifesting self love in your life. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to catching up with you next week. Bye.